and embracing company transparency. My name is Shay Berry, and I will be moderating this webinar. To get started, just a couple webinar tips. You can go ahead and connect to audio using either your microphone or speakers. Go ahead also and enter in any questions you may have for us into the question pane, and we will get to them at the end of the session. Also, just to avoid background noise, everyone will be muted during this session. And now I would like to briefly introduce our featured speaker. Phil Schrader is a product manager at Jibe, and Matt Kopiak is the Senior Business Development Manager at Glassdoor. They have a ton of good info for you today, and I'm just going to briefly walk you through the agenda. So we're going to kick things off with the rise of mobile. Then we're going to talk about a little bit of what matters most to millennials. Talk a little bit about some of the challenges that are associated with mobile job search, and then how you can kind of counteract those challenges and build a business case for having a mobile recruitment strategy. And then we're going to give you a couple tips and tricks on how to develop that strategy. We're going to try to keep today's session pretty short and sweet. So as I mentioned, go ahead and put any questions you may have into the text box, and we will go ahead and answer those at the end of the session. Really quickly, I wanted to kick things off with a poll. So go ahead and take that poll. Let me close my screen really quick. All right, if you guys want to take the next couple seconds to fill that out, that would be great. We're going to cover a ton of this good info. We just wanted to gauge kind of some of your knowledge before we get started. So I'll leave that open for another 10 seconds or so, and then we'll close that and move on. Okay, great. So we'll share those results throughout this presentation, but I would like to get moving and back to the screen share. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and pass things off to Matt Kopiak from Glassdoor to start talking about the rise of mobile. Matt?
Thank you for the introduction, Shay. Once again, my name is Matt Kopiak, and I am a Senior B2B Business Development Manager at Glassdoor. I've been with the company since late 2011, so a little over 2.5 years now. So once again, thank you for the introduction, Shay. So I think we wanted to, before we sort of get into, how to recruit millennials, we just wanted to really talk about what, the rise of mobile. And so you'll see that stat in front of you that mobile shipments surpassed PC shipments in 2010. And that's a data point from the International Data Corporation. So I think that's a staggering statistic, and since 2010, I mean, things have really taken off since then. In preparation for this webinar, and given the fact that I actually am a millennial, I decided to actually conduct an experiment yesterday. So what I wanted to do was to see how important, and how connected I was to my own phone. So my goal was to leave my phone at my desk for the entire day. I was only allowed to check my phone while I was at my desk. So that's pretty tough to do because normally it's with me 24/7, as I'm sure most of the attendees would agree that they actually have the same sort of behaviors as well. So I spent over 4 hours away from my phone yesterday, and it was really tough to actually leave it at the desk. I sort of felt out of touch. I felt myself checking my pockets. I think I counted at least 40 or 50 times where I checked my pockets and thought, oh, where's my phone? And the immediate thing I did when I got back to my desk is I checked my emails. Hopefully not too many people from Glassdoor are listening to this, but I looked at Instagram and I checked news, right? And I'm doing that all from my phone. And I think many of the people on this call, including myself, even though you're at your desk and your computer's in front of you, I check emails on my phone. I mean, literally Outlook's right in front of me, and I find myself checking emails on my phone. So I just think that just sort of speaks to the testament that there's this mobile mind shift, right? And it's all about instant gratification. And it's truer in millennials than any generation before. It's really about getting what you want when you want it. And I think it's a huge opportunity. It's almost like a tidal wave of an opportunity, and your companies must keep up with these expectations. And it's not just true for recruiting, right? I don't know, it's true for whether you're searching restaurant reviews on Yelp, which recently announced in its quarterly earnings report that almost half of the visitors are coming from mobile. Or it's true, whether or not you're searching on TripAdvisor, which they recently said that they have over 100 million downloads of their various apps. or whether you're driving by a house and you want to know home price and you pull out your Zillow app, and of course searching for companies and salaries and reviews on Glassdoor. Just a few other stats about internet usage in general. One is that mobile app, according to ComScore data, mobile apps overtook PC internet usage earlier this year, and it's the first time that's ever happened. And before we move to the next slide, some other stats of some of the largest sites out there. YouTube reported that 40% of its traffic is via mobile. In terms of mobile shopping, eBay reported over $20 billion worth of mobile transactions in 2013. And Facebook recently reported over 1 billion monthly active users on phones and tablets. And so what we're seeing in front of you right now is the fact that mobile apps actually overtook desktop internet usage this year for the first time in January of 2014. So that kind of brings us along to the next point where mobile device accounted for over 55% of internet usage, and of that, apps made up 47% of the total traffic. And I'll get to this slide in just a second, but I just wanted to get back to the shopping paradigm. I spoke about eBay, and also wanted to note that according to an IBM digital analytics benchmark study, that 2013 holiday season, mobile traffic was the highest they've seen. It was up 28% from the same period last year. And it represented a total of 29% of online sales, which is a 40% increase from 2012. And the shift isn't just in the United States, it's global, especially in developing countries. The same study also cited that December 2nd, which is Cyber Monday in the UK, mobile shopping increased by 94% compared to 2012, and over 44% of all traffic was on mobile devices. And I think an interesting fact, especially with shopping in general, is that people use smartphones to browse, but they use tablets to buy. So there's sort of different user behaviors on each one of those screens. What you see up in front of you right now is actually a stat from a Glassdoor survey, and that basically states that 45% of job seekers are using their phones to search for jobs at least once a day, and that's up 2 percentage points from just August 2013. In addition to that, 59% believe they have a better chance of being considered for a job if they apply as soon as the job is posted online. So I think that goes in line with sort of the instant gratification, right? Like we're all looking to get something right now. And I think that's what job boards actually do pretty well, is to send real-time email alerts of job notifications. And it just challenges you, like how many times do you actually check your email on your phone every day? What's your daily mobile activity like? How many times do you check news, email, Facebook, Instagram, etc.? And the patterns that you have are not much different than millennials. They're just sort of exaggerated with with the millennials, including myself. I find myself doing this on a daily basis. So the slide you see in front of you right now, 89%, and once again this is from a Glassdoor survey, 89% of employees admit they look for a new job in the next year, say their mobile device is an important tool in research for their job search. And this is up 7 percentage points from less than a year ago. So this is a shift that is continuing to happen. It's the mobile shift, and it's all about that instant gratification, which you're kind of hear is sort of a recurring theme throughout this presentation. And before we move on, I just wanted to say another interesting fact about this survey that we got back is that in the next 12 months, over 75% of job seekers are likely to search for jobs via their mobile device. And that's up 3 percentage points from just August 2013. In addition to that, over 44% are going to try to apply to jobs via their mobile device as well. So these shifts, like I said, they're sort of happening in the industry, whether it's e-commerce, reviews, certainly in the space we're in, recruitment and with candidates. And we're seeing this traffic for Glassdoor as well. So Glassdoor is currently getting over 40% of its traffic coming through mobile devices. And that's increasing at about 1 percentage point, month over month. Can we actually move on to the next slide, please? So yeah, so we're seeing that across tablet, across mobile. Mobile actually encompasses, smartphone, which is we consider handheld, and tablet, and that's across our native iOS, Android apps, as well as mobile web as well. And so like I said, this trend is continuing to grow. And really this sort of brings us to the point, why should you care, right? We've all heard the cliche, the data doesn't lie. And I think you've been presented with a number of data points that stress the importance of mobile in recruiting. You're right, the data doesn't lie, but what you do with that data, it's really what makes a difference in your company. Right? So I think, like I said before, this is a tidal wave of an opportunity, and it's really a chance. Embracing mobile is really a chance to differentiate yourself from the competition. And if you don't care about this, or if you don't make the shift, you're going to lose out on quality candidates. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, almost half of the workforce will be made up of millennials by the year 2020, and they'll make up nearly 75% of the workforce by 2025. And the interesting thing with millennials is that we're not willing to put up with poor technology, and we don't remember the life without the internet. We're used to openness, we're used to instant gratification, and we're used to connecting with people and information regardless of location or time of day. So I wanted to sort of move on and talk to you about how millennials consume information. So this is a study done by CrowdTap, which is a social media monitoring platform, and it was conducted in January of this year. And it basically, the gist of the study is that millennials consume about 18 hours a day, of media. And you're going to say, wow, that seems really high. Is that actually true? And what they did actually is that these total hours are actually compounded, meaning that a person checking Facebook and watching TV at the same time for an hour would actually count as 2 hours of media consumption. So what we find is that millennials are consuming multiple types of media simultaneously. And I find myself doing this all the time, right? I'll be watching TV and on my iPad at the same time. And so for the purposes of this study, they actually they add up both those numbers, which is how they got 18 hours a day. I thought another interesting point that they brought up was information gathered through UGC, which is the acronym for user-generated content. So think of those as reviews on Glassdoor, Yelp reviews, reviews on Amazon, etc., is trusted by millennials 40% more than traditional media, traditional sources. And they've also found that it's 30% more memorable than other sources as well. There's one additional stat before moving on that I thought was really interesting in the report, was that millennials also found that basically 30% of the time they spend is actually creating content. So not only are we, we're actually consumers of this information, we're actually publishers as well. And so this audience, this millennials, this whole shift is we're not only consuming information, but we're publishing information at a staggering rate.
What I love, and Matt, this is Phil, what I love about this slide is, I think it really highlights how you have additional methods for capturing the attention of millennials, but I think it speaks to how fleeting that attention is. And I think as we'll look forward, when we talk about solutions, something to be cognizant of is that mobile is really about immediacy, and it gives you an opportunity to engage with a candidate at that moment in time. And it shows you the risk of solutions that will rely on getting the candidate's attention multiple times. Because again, wading your way through 18 hours a day of content is one thing. Doing it twice is even less likely to happen.
Yep, that's a really good point, Phil, and thanks for adding that. I completely agree, and I find that our clients who actually implement those strategies are much more successful than those that tend not to. And we have a couple more data points from a survey we conducted, and the next survey is actually 30% of millennials use a mobile device daily to search for jobs. And the interesting part about this survey is that, well, one, obviously we surveyed millennials, but two, that these millennials are actually employed, right? So you can think of these almost as like passive job seekers, passive millennials who are currently employed, use a mobile device daily to search for jobs. A few other interesting data points from this particular survey was that they're interested in getting real-time alerts. About 39% of those are interested in visiting a company's career site on their mobile device. About 37% of those are interested in reading reviews from employees at companies they're interested in. And they want to understand really what it's like to work at a company, but from an employee's perspective, right? So we've kind of hitting on a lot of points that may or may not seem obvious depending on, what the goals of your company actually are. As we move on to sort of, a point that Phil and I already alluded to was that, you really need to capture millennials in the moment, right? And once again, it's defined, millennials are often defined as instant gratification, low attention span, non-desktop using bunch. So this is probably my fault for having this photo. I think a better photo of this would have been actually someone in, Starbucks or in a coffee shop searching for a job. I can't tell you how many of my friends are searching, they're on BART, or, they're on, a bus going to their work, or in a taxi, and they're currently searching for a job. So, yeah, I think a more relevant photo even would have been, what's it, someone in a coffee shop on the go searching for a job. And, I think another huge shift with these millennials is that they're seeking more information than just the actual job, right? So candidates are looking for more than jobs. They really want to understand the reviews, and this is true both for their careers and what they want to understand and what it's like to work at a company from that employee's perspective, but also how many times a day do you actually search Yelp or TripAdvisor or Amazon before buying a product? They're well informed, and they're really interested in sort of understanding what it's like to work there. And we're going to talk more about that in just a bit. So this is also from one of the same studies that we did, more than 54% of millennials read company reviews. And they're interested in researching salary information. So they're not just turning to their mobile devices to look for jobs. They're actually really interested in understanding what the company culture is like at a company, what the company culture is like, and they're connected 24/7, right? So they have the ability to actually do this as well. And so this brings us to the next point, and one, like I said, is sort of a recurring theme, is really transparency in recruiting millennials. Millennials value transparency more than anything. And I actually found a March 17th post in the Harvard Business Review labeled "How Companies Can Attract the Best College Talent." And College Feed did a study of 15,000 millennials in the beginning of the year, and they asked 3 questions. One of those questions are, what are your top 3 things you look for when considering an employer? Right, so I'm going to pause there for a sec, and why don't you think of your own answer. What are the top 3 things you look for when considering an employer? And for me, I would have thought that compensation is probably number 1, right? But the top compensation was actually number 4, and number 1 result was people and culture fit. Number 2 was career potential, right? So understanding what that career path is, what that career path growth looks like. Number 3 was work-life balance, and number 4 was actually compensation. And so the fact that they value transparency more than anything, and that they're connected 24/7 makes accessing this information extremely easy. So I think that's an imperative, and it's even more important for you to sort of embrace this and build out strategies and solutions that actually, capture the millennials' interest. So once again, if you're not already convinced why it's important, another Glassdoor survey said that 51% of new employees actually have buyer's remorse. And so candidates expect realistic job, expectations before they accept the position. They don't necessarily expect everything to be perfect. No company is perfect. There's always pros and cons. But they want to know how your organization really works, before making a decision on whether or not to work there. So 51% of new employees have buyer's remorse. And that's really because the hiring process, and what they're saying is that the hiring process failed to paint a realistic expectation or accurate picture of the job. So along with that same survey, we found that 88% are looking to make a change. The job that they just started 6 months ago, about 88% of those millennials are actually looking to make a change within 6 months. And that's a staggering statistic. And, you saw this in a previous survey, but once again, our survey sort of helps solidify the fact that 68% trust reviews when they see both good and bad scores. So not everything's perfect at every company, and we understand that things go wrong, but we want to know that before we actually get there, right? And so the fact that embracing transparency, you have to understand who your audience is and what sort of makes them tick, right? If it's millennials and they really value people and culture and transparency, it's something that, it's extremely important to embrace, and we'll get into some of the ways at which you can do that later. And so I'd like to take you through the next slide, which is figure out who you want to hire and what attributes are most important to those groups. And I think we've touched on a number of those already. And so I'll take you through a brief case study from Box, which is located in the Bay Area. And you can see that they basically had an initiative to recruit millennials, right? They had a strategic hire decision to recruit more millennials, and they worked with Glassdoor and decided that after implementing their strategy, they saw a 2x influence over millennials. And when candidates were coming in for interviews, 3 out of the 5 candidates were actually referencing using Glassdoor, referencing looking at reviews, culture, company fit. And now, because of the plan and the strategy they implemented with Glassdoor, about 84% of their candidates are actually millennials. So at this point, I'd actually like to hand this over to Phil from Jibe, and he can go through some of the challenges and some of the next slides we have.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. So we've really set the table. We have this 2-part challenge coming your way. We have this rise of mobile, which everywhere on the internet is embracing, but which you probably have traditional HR systems that are slow to respond to that challenge. You can see that these trends in mobile and these trends in transparency are going to disproportionately impact millennial talent. And you know that going forward, your ability to reach out to that group is going to become increasingly important. And so we'll talk about some of the challenges that this group of people and that, quite frankly, the rest of your candidates are going to run into as they start to apply to your jobs. And it shouldn't take you long to discover these. If you go out today and you search for your company's jobs on a smartphone, just make note of what happens when you click on, say, the sponsored postings you've been purchasing or other ads that you've posted. The answer could be that you land on a page that's intended for a desktop user. You have to pinch, you have to zoom to get into the content. That could maybe just be an annoyance, or it may entirely prevent you from moving forward if you have interest. Even if it's the former, you're still going to be losing candidates. The answer could be that you land on a page where you can see some job information, but you have to email yourself to follow up and apply to the job later. And we already started introducing that concept of scheduling 2 appointments with a candidate, especially in the millennial generation, is going to be a challenge. So that may be a better solution, but it's still going to cause drop-off. You're still going to lose candidates. And for all these reasons, candidates have really predictable opinions about what it's like to apply to jobs on a phone. Half of them, I would say at least, think that it's a difficult process. And the 2 challenges that they're running into is they think that they should have to put their phone down, come back later, and apply from a desktop. And again, we have processes that encourage them to think that way. The other thing is that they're running into career sites and applications that they're using to find jobs that aren't mobile optimized, that it leads them along a bit of the path and then dead ends them in the process. So as we go forward, we're going to talk about some solutions for these sorts of problems, so that you don't find yourself in a situation where a candidate is arriving on your site, they're interested in what they're seeing, they maybe read a review or had somebody refer them to the job. They have a few moments right now where you can engage with them, but you may not be providing them an option to follow through with that process. And in fact, 90% of career sites today are not providing a mobile apply option, which then, given how you use your phone, given what Matt has sort of described of people filling time with their phone, if you're not allowing them to follow through with the process, you're in fact encouraging them to go, invest those few extra spare minutes, potentially in a competitor whose website maybe will allow them to move forward. Because again, they're filling a certain amount of time on their phone while they pass from place to place. And so they'll fiddle with an option to try another job, see if this one lets you move forward, or see if it's interesting, and then you've lost them. As we go forward too, there's this additional problem that it's a bit of a legacy problem, but it's still relevant and will be relevant in the job search experience for years to come. And that is, where is my resume? We still think of this as a major part of the process because, quite frankly, any candidate needs to give you some information about who they are and where they're coming from. Traditionally and obviously this is their resume, but when we use the mobile web today or when we use tablet devices, we don't yet have a strong connection to documents on those devices. And so it's very easy to fall back into the trap of needing to do things on desktop if there's a file involved. And we still think of our resume as this sort of separate artifact that we need to bring into the process. Now, fortunately, the answer of where's my resume is actually is often simple, and most candidates will have a copy of their resume available to them on their phone. You just need to help them find it. They may have a public-facing profile on LinkedIn, which they could use as their resume. They may have uploaded their resume to Google Drive or to Dropbox to edit it in multiple places, or they may have emailed it to their mom, and by virtue of that, have a copy ready at hand that they could use, but they're not thinking of it, and you have to help them overcome that obstacle. And really, if you step back, you think about millennials, you think about the mobile problem, if you put this in a sort of strategic context, it's all about solving the right place, right time problem. If you think about great recruiting tools and great recruiting organizations, they are manufacturing opportunities for candidates to find the right job. Right now, the right candidate is out there for the right, and you have the right opportunity for them. But the challenge is all about connecting that person to that job at a point in time when they're ready to move forward on it. And all great recruiting tools are really designed around giving you the ability to do that. If you think about, connecting analytics and job distribution is about finding opportunities to get the right jobs in front of the right people. If you think about talent networks and talent communities, they're about extending the period of time during which you can engage with a candidate to get the right job to them. And then mobile really fits right in with that framework. It's about if you do have the opportunity and the person's attention at this point in time, take advantage of it right now. Don't wait or don't schedule another time to come back for them to sit down at their mobile or at their desktop device or computer at home and finish applying to the job. Capture them right now because you've done so much work to get to that point already. And so, really that should feed that thought process around right person, right job, right place, right time should feed directly into how you build your business case for mobile. You're investing in generating these opportunities for people to find your jobs. You know that you have to shift your attention to recruiting talented millennials, and you have all of this evidence that, say a third of the time or half the time that the right person sees your job, they don't have an effective next step to take on it. And so that's sort of that thought process is the basis of your business case. And then, you can translate that into, you can begin to translate that into dollars and cents just by looking at all of the other investments that you're making. So my coworker Alex has a very good thought process around, say you're spending X amount of dollars on external sources right now. 30% of those candidates who are interacting with those sources are doing so on a mobile device. And if they don't have an option to move forward, you're essentially wasting a third of that traffic. And from that, you can back into the numbers and start to make a very dollars and cents business case to invest more heavily in mobile, just as a function of recapturing your marketing spend, let alone the more intangible benefits of giving candidates a good impression of your company and not frustrating them as they have to try to bounce back and forth across multiple devices. So again, kind of moving on now to the next slide.
Yeah. Thanks, Phil.
Matt, we have another Glassdoor study here for Matt to take you through.
Yeah, and this is actually, like I said, I did one sort of experiment in the beginning yesterday, leaving my smartphone on my desk, but I also wanted to check our internal job click numbers. And what I mean by that is Glassdoor is obviously growing as a company. We have about 40 or so open positions. And so I wanted to see how candidates are interacting with our own jobs, right? And so we recently filled this role, but up until that point, we had an open position for a director of global talent acquisition for Glassdoor. We were not only expanding in the U.S., but internationally as well. And of the people who were interested in applying for that job, 36% actually clicked on that job via a mobile device. And so I just thought that was really interesting. I'm sure a lot of people on this webinar have that title or some recruiting HR title. And so the same sort of habits and same sort of behaviors that you're seeing in millennials, they're also happening with people just like you. I mean, 36% of the people who clicked on that job, they did so via a mobile device. And we're also seeing that throughout multiple positions. And like I said before, it's not only in the U.S., right? It's international as well. So we did hire a senior PR manager in the UK and Europe, and 55% of those clicks came from a mobile device. Almost half of clicks for a senior account manager role came from a mobile device. And for a technical role like a UI UX designer, 36% of those clicks came from a mobile device. So we're seeing these trends sort of across job titles. It's not just for millennials, but it's a much bigger sort of trend. And there's an interesting breakdown too, and I think Jibe does a really good job of solving this problem, but it's not just smartphones, right? When we think of mobile, we think about smartphones, which is like a handheld phone versus tablets. So most of the clicks for these about 70% of them actually came from a smartphone versus a tablet. And I would say about 30% actually came from the tablet. So most people not only browsing but clicking on jobs from smartphones. So I'll transition it back to Phil to take over the next slide.
Excellent. So as you begin to, if you've been convinced by the data, and I think most people today are convinced by the data, and you begin to think about developing your mobile strategy, it is important to step back and do some research and do some framing of the problem. It is easy to, you can begin by sort of making the case just simply based on the obvious point of, handing a phone to somebody in your organization and pointing out that, you can't do anything, you can't apply to the job, and you're dead-ending the candidate. That's an emotional argument that's fairly easy to be convincing and help you move forward. But there are ways to back that up using data that are relevant and important as you both build the case for today and also the case for measuring it going forward. An initial step is getting a handle on the percentage of mobile traffic that's hitting your jobs, just like what Matt took us through on the previous slide about the open positions that they have. Secondly, doing the discovery process of going out and investing some time in clicking through your jobs on your phone, regardless of where they're posted. Not thinking about the process beginning at your career site, but thinking about the process beginning out on sites like Glassdoor or LinkedIn or Indeed, and following the candidate through and seeing where they're being directed and what their experience is on mobile versus desktop. From there, you can start to wrap your mind around some metrics that are going to help you as you move forward. So obviously, the percentage of mobile traffic will be key. You'll likely see it around 30%. It may be trending up toward 50%, just like we saw previously. And then also finding an ability or a capability within your organization to measure conversion today and moving forward. And conversion, again, it's a basic statistic, but it's one you don't want to rush into. You have to think through the entire process and really understand how you want to measure conversion. Matt and I were talking just yesterday about, do you want to measure conversion from the time that they leave an external source to the time that they apply? Do you want to include any login steps that the candidate goes through? And there's no right or wrong answer, but what's important is that you give yourself the ability to measure apples to apples as you make changes and as you improve the process. Time to apply is also critical. Again, you may be using a mobile device to fill in spare moments, and so if you can get the person through to apply to a job in 5 minutes, you have a better shot of capturing them than if it takes 10 or 15. That's an obvious point, but from that, a next step would be to simply time yourself going through the apply process. Apply to a job on desktop, time it. Later on when you have mobile, time it. Figure out, if you can get through it in 5 minutes or not. And finally, with mobile, with some of the limited screen size, with the limited options that are available for mobile, it's not a full computer. You need to give yourself the ability to measure the different events and different choices that candidates are moving through. And so that's things like, does a candidate begin on one device and return on another? Or as they go through the process, what choices do they make in terms of using their resume? So for example, do 20% of your candidates use their LinkedIn profile as their resume? Or are others trying to kind of manually compose it on the fly? Are they signing up to receive messages, or are they not? And are they exhibiting different behavior based on device? So perhaps a mobile user is more receptive to follow-up emails than someone who's using their desktop device. So these are kind of 4 points to be thinking about and to give yourself a basis for measuring success beyond the point when you simply solve the problem, but getting to a point where you're truly optimizing the solution. From there, as we continue to talk through developing your mobile strategy, again, we talked about analyzing your site traffic. As you do that, it's that question again of going through the various paths and seeing, for example, if you have a mobile optimized external source, a page in the process that's not optimized, and then a mobile apply flow hooked onto that, you're not doing yourself any favors because you're still inviting drop-off as they bounce from device to device or bounce from experience to experience. Alternatively, I definitely have seen it where looking at a competitor and becoming frustrated about the candidates that they're able to reach if they do have a strong mobile process is a good motivator for inspiring change within your organization. So it's definitely an option. But again, even within that, you need to focus on doing what's right for your organization too. Your apply flow may require additional steps that they don't have to go through, but they're right for your organization and you need to use them. So look to them for inspiration. Don't look to them for copycat answers. And then finally, as you think of ways to implement and improve on your mobile strategy, again, at the high level, they're very obvious, but there are some details to think through with each. Making processes quick, making them short, and taking away steps are just core tenets of making life easier on the internet. But there's more to this than just taking steps out of the process or ensuring that pages load quickly on a mobile device. It's about finding opportunities to do work for candidates. So for example, if you have a resume, you should parse it so they don't have to fill out more information later. If a candidate's applied before, you should capture that information and use it the next time they come back to apply to a job, so you save them work as they become more and more interested in your company. If you have validation, validate as quickly as you can and make it very clear that we want you to move forward in the process, but there's just you left a dash out of your phone number, or better yet, don't make them include the dashes between the numbers. Things like that. Optimizing any sort of process where there are multiple steps. Experiment with throwing in a progress tracker. Let them know what they're signing up for and whether it's going to be, a 5-step process or a 50-step process, so that they can get a sense of momentum and encourage them that they really can follow through with this job interest on the spot. And then finally, just as you go through the process, any places where you're loading really heavy-duty content, avoid that for mobile. Don't make them use Flash. If you have long job descriptions, have an ability to make them shorter so that they can continue moving forward and see what options they have. With that, Matt's going to take us through a couple of final points on what options may be available for you today, and also what options make up a good mobile career site.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. I think these are definitely sort of in line with what you already talked about, but a few of the things that great mobile career sites have, obviously current job openings, I would say that's number one. We saw data that, that millennials are interested in applying to jobs immediately. They want that instant feedback as well. I think you brought up a really good point on the last slide that, if you are actually considering them or not, get back to them immediately. Like I would always, when I was applying to jobs, I actually appreciated a rejection letter. You'd appreciate those letters, and they're canned, but you do appreciate those. And the quicker you get someone that, the more thankful they'll actually be. And on the flip side, if you are interested in moving forward, let them know. Let them know that you want to take the next steps. And then obviously, a description and examples of company culture. And so this is critically important because we saw in that recent survey of millennials that people and culture, a good culture fit and transparency is basically the number one important thing that they're interested in. And I think that's important too, right? Not just to add photos, et cetera, to your career site, because photos are one of those things. It's almost like a bag of chips where you can't just have one, right? You have to get through the entire bag, and you have to flip through all those photos. So encouraging your employees to leave photos of, their office and, company outings, et cetera, whether it's playing at the ping pong table. Those are the sort of things that millennials definitely, they sort of value that information. And then company history, how did the company start? What sort of help paint the picture, of how the company started and where it's going. And then obviously a day in the life, right? So what's happening now? What's it like for me to work there? And then what are some options that are currently available, right? So I think Jibe does a really great job, especially with the analytics side of things. So Phil mentioned, depending on what's important to you and your company, being able to track sort of conversions and, the funnel and where candidates fall off, or what, what they're using, whether they're using a Dropbox or Google Drive or LinkedIn to sort of upload the resume. But there's also some current ATSs, and caveat on the next slide that I certainly, have probably missed them, but some of the ATSs, and this is what I do at Glassdoor as well, I work closely with a lot of the applicant tracking systems out there. Some of them currently have, mobile apply available. iSIMS being one of them, connects to Silk Road. Workday recently launched their ATS. and then smart recruiters and ultimate software. And this is sort of an evolution, right? They're all at different stages of, the mobile candidate experience. Some have just mobile job descriptions, but they don't, allow you to apply. Others just allow you to save your job. But these are also some current options that you can look into. And I also encourage you to push your ATS to build a mobile apply solution as well. From the conversations that I've had with ATSs, it's something that they know is important, but more often than not, the people who pay the bills, which is you, right, the recruiters, HR managers, they're not requesting this, so it doesn't get pushed in the product roadmap, right? And so there are a ton of things you're thinking about, but I think, understanding how millennials are searching for jobs, understanding that, they're going to be over half the workforce in the coming years, and up to 75% of the workforce by 2025 or 2030. It's important to sort of capture their interest. And so, Phil, I believe you had a few next, sort of thoughts and takeaways.
Yeah, I mean, I think just, we shared a lot of data today. I think that there's definitely a sense of urgency for solving the mobile problem and also for adapting to the upcoming generation. And the fundamental message is what we talked about throughout, which is you are missing out on talent today if you're not providing mobile options, and you're particularly missing out on the next batch of talent that's coming forward. Again, being a great recruiting organization is about manufacturing the opportunities for candidates to find your job, and it's truly a matchmaking exercise. And I think that matchmaking problems are filled with either stories of missed opportunities or stories of those perfect chance encounters. And again, Matt talked about candidates looking at jobs in coffee shops today, and right now the right candidate for your position may be looking at a review of your company on Glassdoor, and their friend might be 5 minutes late to meet them. And if they have the opportunity to follow through on that interest, then you're going to be better for it, and you're going to have an opportunity to get better talent. If they don't have the opportunity to follow through it, then the next day could come around and you are buried 19 hours deep in content. And they may forget about your job entirely as they move on to the next great thing online. So, solve the right here, right now problem, and, invest in a mobile strategy and invest in reaching millennials and understand how they behave.
I totally agree. Phil, what would you say, in your opinion, I think we had a lot of good content in this webinar, but what would you say are the 2 or 3 most important things someone could walk away with, right? If you had sort of a 30-second pitch, I know I have my answers, and I think we would probably both agree that checking your mobile site traffic is probably at the top of that list, right? Like understanding how much of your career site traffic is currently, coming via mobile. What would you say? Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, and I would also, I'm a fairly dry and kind of nuts and bolts person, and I think that, going through your existing setup today, and just identifying dead ends for tablets and mobile devices should be high on the list. Just understanding what you currently have, and from there, identifying either large solutions or small solutions to fill those needs.
That's a good point. So you're actually saying go through the application process,
yeah.
Try to apply to your job at your own company on your phone or on your tablet, and see what sort of roadblocks you hit?
Exactly. Like right now, like take your phone
Yep.
out of your pocket and try to apply to one of your jobs, and you may be horrified by the results.
They're probably already on their phone, right? If they're anything like me, they probably check their emails 10 times. Or actually, I didn't do that during this webinar, but generally my behavior in webinars is, you're on your phone nearly the entire time. So.
Right.
All right, you guys, looks like we have a couple more questions just to wrap things up. This one's for Phil. So, Phil, how exactly does Jibe help solve the mobile apply problem?
Sure. So happy to talk through that. Again, there are a variety of strategies for solving it. What we look to do is provide a mobile optimized layer over your existing apply flow. So we have the ability to interact with your ATS and still capture all of the information that's needed for your application process. But what we try to do is, by layering over the top, provide mobile-friendly design and mobile-friendly options that allow you to complete those steps. So as an example, if you have a file upload step for your resume in your existing process, we will then transform that into 5 different ways of attaching your resume, whether it's your LinkedIn profile or cloud storage, or the email to your mom, right? So it's about your existing apply flow, but a mobile layer over the top.
Awesome, thank you. This one's for Matt. How does Glassdoor help me with my initiative to recruit millennials?
Yeah, so I say, as Phil sort of explained, he's sort of the next step in the process. Like once a millennial, a candidate is actually interested in applying for that job, you would potentially be passed into like the Jibe experience, which he was saying is that layer that integrates with the ATS, which is a really mobile-friendly, great experience. Well, we're sort of the step before that, right? So by default, if you have a company profile on Glassdoor, that's already mobile optimized, which is great, right? So millennials or anyone could really research your information, understand it, what it's like to work at a company from, your employee's perspective. And then recently, we actually allowed the option to upload reviews, attach photos, etc., from your mobile device. So I would say it's more on the branding side of things. And then we also partner with companies, with Jibe and some others out there, to make the whole candidate experience really seamless as well. So if you go with a solution like Jibe, we also have a really clean integration where your jobs will automatically get posted on Glassdoor, and there's really nothing you have to do on your end, right? We'll make sure to send candidates directly in to the proper mobile apply flows. So Shay, yeah, I would say, that's a great question, and it's more in the branding piece. So in the whole consumer decision life cycle, it's really sort of the first step in doing the research is where Glassdoor really helps out with that.
Great. And then another question, let's see, maybe for Phil, maybe for both. How do I track the success of my mobile implementation?
Sure. So I can take that initially. The first thing you have to do is establish sort of what your apples-to-apples comparison is going to be. I think one of the hardest things about this problem is that today you may have nothing for mobile, and if you then implement a mobile solution, you're going to have something. And so there's an obvious win there in the data. You can go from, say, 0 mobile applies to 10,000, but that's really not enough. And I think that you then have to start looking at slices of data to see where mobile is making an impact in the overall number. So you should not only see mobile applications come through and find a method for tagging those applications, but you should look for that to move the needle overall. So if you're getting X number of applications today and you implement a mobile solution, you should be able to increase that overall number, by a significant amount. But again, what's tricky about that is the mobile data can get lost in the rest of the information. So another example you could try would be knowing that a large proportion of Glassdoor's traffic or Indeed's traffic is coming from mobile. If you have that source tagged effectively, you should then be able to see your investment in external sources start to return more because you're dead-ending fewer candidates. So again, a little bit of a mixed answer, but look for it in subsets of the data, and kind of get past that initial thought process of just we went from 0 mobile applies to a whole bunch of mobile applies. You have to look for impact beyond that.
All right, great. I think we're going to end things there. Just to clarify, we got a couple questions from people asking if the slides and our recording will be sent out, and absolutely those will be sent out to you a little bit later this afternoon. So go ahead and feel free to share those with any of your colleagues. I'm going to leave us with one more poll, you guys, if you wouldn't mind answering that. I'll leave it open for the next 30 seconds or so, but let us know about the content of this webinar. I'm sure for, obviously Glassdoor and Jibe, we're always looking to improve ourselves. So before you leave, go ahead and fill out that poll. But I'd really like to thank Phil and Matt. Thank you guys for such great content. And thank you to everybody for taking the time to join us today. We look forward to seeing you at another upcoming webinar, and enjoy the rest of your day. Those materials will be on their way shortly. Thanks, everybody.